Okay, we're rolling.
All right.
Amanda, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim. I'm excited to be on.
Can you tell everyone who you are, what you do?
I am Amanda with A.G. Markel. I'm a contemporary wildlife sculptor, and I tell stories about the human spirit in bronze and negative space.
That's a big intro. What is, can you explain what that means and how you do that?
Yes, yeah. So essentially, I work in clay, and then the piece will end up going to a foundry and getting cast in metal. And so the storytelling part of what I'm doing is honestly trying to express parts of the human spirit. So resilience, courage, hope, presence. What does it look like to be resilient? And so I try and portray that in bronze. That way, when people look at it, they see a piece of themselves reflected back. And when they're going through something challenging, they have something to hold on to and remind them of who they are, that will help make them strong.
So the animal is an archetype for a different emotion or a different side of a human being.
It is, yeah.
That's a very cool concept.
Thank you.
So when somebody looks at one of these pieces, that could invoke or help them feel that part of themselves.
That's the idea. Yeah, that's what I aim for.
Where did that all start?
So I've always loved animals. And so they've been kind of the primary thing that I've made ever since I was very young. And then as I got older, art kind of started being the thing that I used to process my own life and the things that I was going through. So they all had stories of just my own life, things that I was thinking about and learning. And then as I started selling work, occasionally I'd have a really cool connection with somebody and would tell them the story of like what inspired that piece. And I had people just start crying because it was something that was more universal. It wasn't just a story about me, it was a story about us, people in general. And so I just started realizing how powerful art can be. Like it has the ability to open doors into people's lives and um, get to, it's open doors for so many conversations and stories and the opportunity to get to know so many people. And so that's really become an ingrained part of what I do, is that storytelling side of things, to just be a platform for connection.
That's such a great concept. Where did your art journey begin as far as making these pieces?
In the mud in my backyard as a kid. Yeah, I was homeschooled. We grew up on like 80 acres, and I just always loved being outside. I'd play in the mud a lot with my brother, and so mud pies became animals. And then eventually, my parents got me some clay, and I used all of it in a matter of days. So I've also, done painting and kind of a variety of basically every other kind of art that there is, but clay and sculpture is one of the primary ones that stuck. So I started selling work when I was 14 to fundraise for an orphanage in Africa, and did that for a variety of, like, for several years. And then when I moved to Montana, went through a business program that's designed for artists. It was a really, really cool program. It's called the Montana Entrepreneurship, except it's spelled ART, so entrepreneurship. Um, and so that's when I really started thinking about it more as a business and selling work more professionally at that point.
That's cool that you've done that program. It seems like that's always a big inflection point is the business side of art and artists and,
Hmm.
being able to make a living or market I think I've said this before, but the struggling artist it's a archetype, I guess, to use the word that you were using, but I don't know, it's a very common archetype is the struggling artist. So it's cool to have a business program based around it.
Yes, it really is. It's a very important thing, just because artists naturally are more right-brained, and a lot of them don't have business schooling. And so having that to kind of balance things out was a really big deal for me.
When I get done asking you more about your art, I have so many questions about homeschool.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And then so this has evolved to this. You have some little pieces. Do you want to pull up these pictures, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I can start with them.
Yeah.
I can start with the minis. So I have kind of a 3 to 4 general categories that my pieces fall into. So this is the first one, the teeniest, tiniest little sculptures that you've ever seen in your whole life, and they're adorable. I love tiny things. So these started kind of because when I was first sculpting, like a lot of my stuff was small. But also just because I love small things. But I ended up making these into bottle stoppers. So I release one each year for Christmas. So they make great gifts for Christmas or for companies that are looking for, something really unique, a real estate agent that closes a big house. If you had a client that came and, had you drive them around every single year and you really wanted to say thank you from a local unique gift, these are great for those. Secondly, I do kind of your mid-range tabletop size that's really good for interiors. So you can pull up some of the pictures of those pieces. So these are good for homes, obviously, high-end businesses and things of that nature. That's kind of the main size that I'm working in right now for a lot of my pieces.
Hi, folks. Quick note from me. If you don't already know, the goal of Mountain Mule Media is to build real connection between Montana's businesses and the people they serve. If this episode or any other has given you something worth thinking about, smiling at, or passing along, I've got a small ask. Share it with a friend, text it to someone, post it in your story. That one simple action helps these businesses get seen, grow, and thrive, and it helps this show keep going. Thank you for supporting these Montana businesses. Now back to the show.
So this one is called Mountain Heart. And I'll kind of just go into a little bit of the storytelling element with this one. And it's actually fun. So this one is specific to Bozeman because that's the Bridgers in the back of the wolf. So the idea with this one is, so he's actually standing on an EKG heartbeat. And so he's running down that line. So it kind of shows how he gets his strength and direction from his heart. And in nature, to create a mountain range, the earth itself has to fracture and withstand a lot of pressure. And as humans, we hold a lot of value for the mountains. Their strength, they're beautiful. We go there to find peace and respite. But it takes friction to create a mountain. So the symbolism then of having the mountains inside of him is how in our lives, we also go through seasons where we get broken and fractured and we withstand more pressure than we think we can endure. Yet that very process actually creates something of strength and beauty inside of us. And then the moon is a kind of a reoccurring symbol in a lot of my work that just represents light in the darkness, that no matter how dark things are, there is always light if you're able to look up. So that's become one of the most well-known pieces that I've kind of had. I had a collector that fell in love with this piece, and so we made it larger. She commissioned me to make it 6 feet, and then the Loveland Sculpture Garden, Benson Sculpture Garden, ended up commissioning 2 additional wolves. So this installation happened just this summer, which was really very exciting. It's a 14-foot piece that's permanently installed in that park down there.
That's huge.
Yeah, I could not believe it happened. I was so thrilled.
Where is that?
So Benson Sculpture Garden in Loveland, Colorado.
Very cool. So this is 6 feet wide or tall?
6 feet long. Yeah.
Okay.
So nose to tail.
Okay. And that's the one, but you said the one in this park is bigger than that?
Yeah. So it's essentially 3 wolves. The other 2 are about 7 feet. So then running side by side, it's about 14 feet total.
That's so cool. There's so much going on there between the heartbeat and the Bridger Mountain Range and the moon. What's the evolution of that whole piece look like as far as, it starts to evolve and then you think of the heartbeat or the EKG and then what does that process look like in your mind? Or even from a time standpoint, is this a thing that's years in the making? Is it come together as you're making it or sort of reveal itself, some might say?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of my pieces happen in different ways. So some of them will start with an image that I have, and then the story kind of gets ingrained through the process of creating it. Some of them I have a word like resilience, which is one of the other pictures that I start with that concept and then try and visualize what it looks like to embody that trait. So oftentimes I'll be working on 3 different pieces at a time, kind of rotating between them. It keeps it fresh and keeps me inspired, but it also allows it allows the piece like time to breathe and evolve. So I'll have a piece, that I've worked on, and it'll sit on a shelf for sometimes even 6 months, and then one day I'll look at it and I'll know exactly what it's supposed to be. So it does evolve and kind of happen over time.
I want to ask you a question about what's your philosophy, not to get too down a rabbit hole of where the ideas or the art comes from. Do you have a view or an outlook on that?
Where does it come from? Well, it is kind of funny because if you talk to artists, there's oftentimes like a theme through the year that suddenly everybody's doing foxes and then suddenly everybody's doing elk. And so it's kind of funny just to like see that sometimes we're on the same wavelength or something. I don't know. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Where does it come from? I think the human spirit is innately creative. I think that's how we're designed. Um, as created beings, we are also creators.
Yeah, because I guess what I'm thinking or getting to, I'm not trying to ask the question in a roundabout way, but I've heard people say the things, this art comes through me or this came to me. Some people will say, oh, I'm just the person that's sort of relaying this. And maybe different actors say that and different artists that it's kind of something that's in all of us and they just found a really good way to express it similar to the way a musician would.
Hmm.
Or do you think it's more of your life experience and the stuff that you've gone through, or a combination of them? It's a very, you know, esoteric question, I guess.
So my pieces, I would say, are very personally tied to who I am and my experience of the world. However, I do also believe that there is a reason that we do create, right? So there is that spark inside of everybody. They just have a different way of expressing it. So some it's through music, some it's through art, some it's through hospitality and how they love people. So I think it's unique to me, but it's also like just individually in everybody else and just expresses itself in a different way.
Yeah, I agree. It's very interesting to see the way some people just seem to really hone their particular skill and
Hmm.
use that as their outlet for expression.
Right.
So I was just mostly trying to get at, where does it come from? I'll slide to one of these other ones. Okay.
Yeah, so that's in tarot. That was my very first negative space piece. So negative space is a term that refers to kind of the open spaces. Um, and you can use negative space like on the outside of your piece. I've started using it inside of my pieces. That concept kind of was born through um, an exercise that I did actually during COVID. I was trying to bring in the elements that I love about painting into my sculptures. So a lot of sculptures, like historically, they're very traditional, they're solid, they're Western themes. And so I was trying to have my own voice. And so the aim was to bring the other things that I love about life and about art into my sculptures so that it embodied more of who I am. And so one of the things that I love about painting is the lost edges, where something can just fade into the background. But you can't really do that with sculpture because if you have a leg that just disappears, it looks terrible. so so this was kind of I also love like the simplicity of a sketch, right? And so this was the idea of bringing how do you have the lightness of a sketch and the simplicity where you can look at it and the person looking at it actually gets to create it as they fill in those spaces. So what's fun about things like this is I'll look at it and I'll see something, but you look at it and you actually can see something entirely different. So there are people that see my pieces and they're like, oh my gosh, this looks like a tree, or this looks like a heart, or this looks like all kinds of different things that I didn't necessarily even intend or notice myself. But the negative space kind of facilitates that ability to be able to create the piece as you're looking at it. And so it's become kind of the main thing that I'm known for is that open space within the pieces. And it's also allowed me to start incorporating other things like the mountain range, in the last piece and things like that, where you wouldn't otherwise really be able to incorporate that. So it's kind of the merging of two different concepts into a single idea.
So what do you see in this piece beyond the wolf?
Yeah, so that piece for me was really about um wholeness. So in tarot means whole, but this piece obviously doesn't look whole, right? There's so many pieces that are missing. And I think all of us have parts of ourselves that we try and hide from the world because we don't think they're good enough, or we're ashamed, or um, whatever, for whatever reason we hide. And so this one is really about understanding that those are important pieces about who we are. Like, those negative things about ourselves also define who we are. The hard experiences that we've had have also created us into who we have become. And so it's honoring and giving room for all of the parts of yourself to be seen and felt and held and incorporated into your being as one. So it's, you find wholeness not in perfection and having all of yourself complete. You find wholeness in allowing space for all parts of yourself, both the good and the bad, the light and the dark, all of those experiences.
That's deep. It's like Carl Jung shadow stuff,
Yeah. A little bit, a little bit.
but very cool. I dig it. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, yeah, we didn't pull that one up yet.
This is resilience. As you can imagine, it was a very complicated piece to make. So all of my pieces have armatures underneath the clay. It's an oil-based clay that essentially will never dry or harden. So I can work on it for years if I wanted to, but it's also not very structurally sound. So underneath all of those little tiny pieces, there was a piece of wire first. And then in the casting process, it was also a little bit of hell because to be able to release from the mold properly, we had to cut that into, I don't know, probably 30 different parts and weld it back together. So my poor foundry, they did amazing, but it's a difficult piece. However, the piece is about resilience, and so there's an element of that is just proper, right?
The irony.
I know, it's kind of funny. Oftentimes, the creation process of the piece actually tells its story itself. There's just something about like the overlay of actually experiencing that as I'm making it that is kind of fun. So he's kind of made to look like he's trudging through a snowstorm. He's got his eyes closed. He can't even see where he's going. And he's made out of tree branches. And so it's the concept that sometimes when we're going through difficult things, we have to stand strong and be rooted and grounded like a tree, send our roots down deep and just hold on. But sometimes we also have to have the faith to take a step forward, not knowing where our foot's going to land. So the angle of which the base is cut is a diagonal. So he's actually walking off the edge of that base. And he's got the faith that the ground will rise up to meet him. So this was actually a really fun piece. I had a couple that fell in love with it, and the wife ended up contacting me later after the show and bought the piece. And then it took a while for us to connect and plan something, but so I'm a little bit of a prankster. I love surprises and things of that nature, and she was totally on board for this. So they came into town and were picking up some supplies, and I went into Murdoch's and we just ran into each other on accident, right? And so it had been like a year since they had seen the piece, and so they came over to the studio and we surprised him then with the piece that she had bought because he had loved it so much. And he ended up actually getting this tattooed onto his arm, which was such an honor to have, something that meant enough to somebody that they would actually get a tattoo of it.
Yeah, did you ever think that?
No.
I'm gonna make this art and people are gonna tattoo it on
Not
their
in a
skin?
million years.
So this is embodying the resilient human spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Yeah, there's so much more depth there that you might not see when you look at it, but it's very cool to look at the picture and hear you tell the story. Hey folks, Tim here with Mountain Mule. I've got a quick announcement I wanted to tie in here. I'm excited this spring 2026. we're officially going to start doing park tours through Yellowstone Park. These will be day tours starting and ending in Bozeman with custom pickup and drop off locations along the way. We're building out the program now, so there'll be lots of updates coming through, but please keep us in mind if you've used us for transportation in the past. We plan on delivering the same quality of service, and we're excited to be able to expand what we're doing to have a busier summer for the teams and be able to offer more options. Are you familiar with the band Whiskey Meyer?
No, I'm not.
Okay, they're a country rock band. I heard them say on a podcast a while back when people ask the meaning of their songs, they won't tell anyone.
Mm.
Interesting because what this band member said is that song to each band member and each individual that listens to the song may mean something different, and they don't want to take that away from them. So it is kind of cool, especially looking at the last piece with all that negative space, the way everyone can look at it and pull their own thing. And I'm sure everyone has their own version and interpretation of it. I see so many, they look like elk antlers and elk sheds when I
Yeah.
look at it,
Yeah.
but I see the roots. It's very cool. It's just knowing that deeper concept is cool.
Yeah. Well, and I love getting to hear everyone's individual interpretations. Like I offer the stories that are my experience that kind of go along with it, because a lot of people uh, don't necessarily know how to interpret it, or um I think it's nice for some people to have kind of a starting point. But for anybody who has their own vision or interpretation of it, like that's amazing. I love hearing that it looks more like antlers to you. Like that's awesome.
I agree. Personally, I enjoy hearing the artist's story because
Hmm.
it gives a lot more context, and I think it would still have my own unique interpretation, but to know that that's why I was kind of picking at where the idea comes from because
Hmm.
the concept of where it all started is very cool. And I think that other one's on here.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
this
So
is the three.
yep.
Do they all have the Bridger range, or do they have different ranges in them? Or
They
they
have different ranges. Yeah. So the first leading wolf is the Tetons, and then the Bridgers, and then Glacier. So, and then there's a moon, the full moon in the center, and then waxing and waning on either side. So it's kind of the phases. Um, and so this one is really about community. So each of them is standing on one leg, and they get their strength and structural integrity through being welded to one another. Like they wouldn't be structurally sound enough to be on their own in a public place where people are going to be, hanging on them and doing things like that. So they get a lot of strength through each other, and that's also the story of us as well. Community is very important.
That's very cool. How, are people touching these things and jumping around them?
Hmm.
And
Yep, yep.
but they're
Any piece of art in public is fair game.
that makes sense. That's that's very cool that you came up with sort of some additional context with the combination of all three of them. As far as the process, and I know you touched on it lately, but what does the whole process look like as far as making these things come to life from, from starting in your head to they're in that park now?
Yeah. I'll try and simplify it as much as possible, because it is the founder process especially is a very complex process. But so I'll start with an idea. Essentially, I'll sketch it out either on paper or in clay, kind of make like a flat mini version. That way I can get the flow of the piece and anatomy and all of those things figured out, especially now that I've started working larger. Once you get the internal armature set, it's very difficult to move it around. So having the ability to move like a small one is helpful, just because you don't have to work around that internal structure. So get the design figured out, then I'll make the internal armature, which is essentially using piping and wire to kind of act like the bones underneath the clay. Then block in the clay, then detail the clay. Blocking generally goes fairly quickly, where you're just getting large chunks in, and then the detailing takes forever and a day, which is partially why I work on multiple projects at a time, because the detailing gets very tedious. Um, Then after that, so it goes to a foundry. They're going to make a mold of it. It's a rubber mold with a rigid backer. And then they'll take that off. And so the original sculpture gets destroyed in that process. So as they're peeling the mold off, the original is destroyed. So I'll reclaim all of that clay and use it again. They'll put that mold back together. So oftentimes the original is going to be cut into multiple parts so that it will release from the mold properly. So they will pour wax into the mold and they'll kind of like roll it around and dump out the excess. And they'll build up to 5 layers of wax. And so then you're going to have the exact same sculpture, but it's going to be hollow since they've dumped out the excess every time. So they'll take off that mold. You've got the wax version and they'll typically cut that again. So say that you have a piece that's cut in half. So then they're going to do a solid mold. So it'll be a wet and then a dry, wet, dry. So they'll do like 10 layers of this. So it's going to go on the inside of the sculpture and the outside because they've cut it apart. So you're essentially creating a channel, right? So then they put it in the kiln. This is where it gets its name. It's called lost wax casting. So the wax is going to melt out and the shell will cure. Then they're going to pour molten bronze into that channel. And then once that's set, they'll break the mold off the outside, weld everything back together, and then retexture it, which is amazing because they're using a different medium and different tools, and yet they're able to match the exact textures. And then use fire and chemicals to get the different color variation. So that's called patina. So that monument that you saw was actually cast in about 100 different pieces.
So it's a process.
It is a process. Yeah. So typically a foundry, it'll take about 3 months to get a piece through the foundry. And I'll be working on a piece for, anywhere from 2 months to a year, depending on, the flow of everything else that I've got going on. But yeah.
Is it local here where you send it to get this done, the foundry, or is it somewhere?
Unfortunately not. We did have 2 foundries here that closed during COVID. There's a small one still in Livingston, but I am actually working with a new startup foundry in Billings. So they just started a couple of months ago. So it's much closer than going all the way to Colorado or Kalispell.
I kept thinking in my head or picturing when you get say a crown or something in your teeth and you bite into it and they get the molding. Like
Yeah.
probably not similar at all, but the concept of
General concept, yeah.
I had no idea prior, so it was very educational for me.
Yeah, good.
Is there anything crazy you're working on now or different or out of the ordinary from all the stuff we just looked at?
So many exciting things. Okay, so I have always wanted to do large African cats. They've always been one of my favorite animals. I've been working on kind of building out my mountain animal theme. And so just a couple of weeks ago, I decided now's the time. So I'm working on a leopard. And part of the reason that I'm just excited about those is like the stripes and spots I just think are going to look very, very cool and very dynamic with the negative space. So I'm excited about that. Otherwise, this year I've got a lineup of also a grizzly bear and a half life-size elk, which will be really cool. What else? I do have kind of a larger concept for a piece that will be like I don't know, hopefully like a 25-foot installation that I'm hoping to get kind of several installations throughout the US. But that's in the very, very beginning stages. So
With a piece of that size, is it something that somebody planned out and has purchased, or are you making these and then selling them? How does that process work? Because you did go to the business school, so I'm assuming you have some sort of strategic
some sort of a
approach.
plan, yeah. So there's a variety of different ways to fund projects like that. Cities typically do have a budget for the arts. Developments oftentimes will also have a percentage for the arts. With this particular project, I am looking to actually create opportunities for individuals to tell their own story. Since my pieces are so story driven, I'd like to create a platform for other people to be a part of it and to tell their own stories. And so then with that, it would essentially be crowdfunded. So there'll be smaller portions that then turn into a large piece. And so that's kind of the general project.
That's a cool concept.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think there's a lot of potential.
What do you have as far as local here in Bozeman or Southwest Montana? If anyone wanted to see these pieces, is there anything on display anywhere or in any?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I've got a gallery in Jackson Hole, one in Sheridan, Wyoming, and then Old Main Gallery downtown has some of my work. But honestly, if you're interested, I would highly recommend just reaching out to me. All my contact information is on my website. Just come for a tour of the studio. So it's really interesting to get to see the pieces in process as well as some cast. And I love the opportunity to get to meet people as well. So reach out anytime.
That was very cool the way you talked through the. Hopefully, I did my job and got them up on the screen, but I can edit them in if I didn't. Okay, homeschool.
Yeah.
Where you were your entire life? Did you ever go to school?
No, I mean, so yes, homeschooled my entire life. I did take a variety of like extracurriculars and had done like a couple semesters at the community college when I was in high school. But yes, technically,
Where'd you go?
I grew up in Colorado Springs.
Okay. So what was that? How was that experience when it happened, and how is it when you look back at it now?
Yeah. So I have three siblings. All four of us were homeschooled all the way, and honestly, I loved it. It was great because in a lot of ways, I think that it taught me a lot of the things that I need in order to be able to run a business because there's a lot of self-discipline that's required, time management. You know, if you get your stuff done, you get to go play. If you're going to procrastinate, you don't get that opportunity. But you also have a lot more opportunity to explore the things that actually interest you. So I spent a lot of time outside with animals, sculpting, drawing, painting, whatever. I am primarily self-taught with art. I had tried taking a couple classes here and there, and it just the dynamics of that did not work for me. So my process has just been a lot of like make it up as you go, but I actually had the time to be able to do that. Um, I think the other thing that homeschooling gave me that has been a huge blessing in my life is my siblings. So my parents were very intentional about making sure that we figured out how to work together and how to work things through and how to have conversations. And my siblings are my biggest blessing in my entire life, really. Like we've got each other's back through thick and thin, and that's the way it's always been. So, I just I think that there's just more opportunity if you're living with intention to do that through homeschooling because you just have so much more time together.
That's very cool. The Where are you in the order, and is there how many brothers, sisters, etc.?
Yeah, so I'm third, oldest sister. We've got 3 years between each of us. So sister, brother, me, younger sister. So three boys and a girl.
Okay,
Three girls and a boy. What on earth?
three girls and a boy. Got it, got it. And you guys all the way through, did your parents both really want this? Was it your mother, your father, but was a unanimous agreement?
Yeah, I think it was probably a little bit more driven by my mom. But yeah, my dad was supportive.
Very cool. So I was homeschooled.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Um, but ultimately, so I have three siblings as well.
Okay.
All my siblings ended up going to public school. We all had the option around high school age. I was pretty committed to our family's farm by that age, so that was the route I took. How did your parents weave in this social aspect of it? Because that was looking back in hindsight, I think we had pretty good social exposure because we played sports and did a lot of
Mhm.
things off of our home and farm. But if in hindsight, that's the only thing I would have been more beneficial to have more social exposure.
Sure. Yeah. I do think that that's an important element. We were also involved in sports. We had acreage, but we weren't so far out of town that people wouldn't come and visit too. So because we had animals and horses and, like dirt bikes and fun things to do, we were kind of a hub for people coming out to us as well. Um, so I think the dynamics of like being intentional with siblings helped being kind of a draw to other people was a big deal. But yeah, we also did sports and a variety of other activities. We were involved in a homeschool co-op for a while as well.
And do you have any kids or no?
No.
Do you want kids?
Um, yeah, quite possibly with the right person.
Do you think
Uh,
that you'll wanna homeschool them?
if I had kids, I would definitely want them to be homeschooled.
And do you have any nieces or nephews?
Yes, a niece and a nephew, 7 and 9.
Nice.
They're the best.
Are they homeschooled or are they
Yeah, so they were public schooled to start off with, and just in the last 2 years, 2 semesters, they've started being homeschooled.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about, especially with, everything that's going on in the world these days. Do you want your kids to be public schools, which is probably a great question, and I think my mother, probably similar to your parents, and I remember she had said that way back in the day. She was the first official podcast guest, but she said the first time she held her child in her arms, she knew that there was no way she was gonna let somebody else raise that kid. So I
Mm,
don't know if that's where it comes from originally, because she wasn't homeschooled and my father wasn't, but it's a I it's a I like the concept. I just would try to be as intentional as possible too, that the social exposure was,
yeah.
because I mean, historically, homeschooled kids are they get a label of being pretty weird. And I think it's because they're socially uncomfortable and awkward.
Mhm.
And you seem relatively normal socially. I don't know
I
you
mean, kinda.
I don't know you that well, but being a business owner and you're gonna be public facing, but I think it's an interesting balance to think about.
Mhm. Well, and I think one thing, because a lot of the conversations, especially earlier on when people would find out I was homeschooled, they were like, "Wow, but you're normal." And I think that it's a little bit unfair because for the people who really struggle socially, if they were in school, I think a lot of times they end up being homeschooled because it's not a good dynamic for them. But there's a whole group of people that are perfectly socially fine and also homeschooled. Um, and so it's just a lot of times I think those labels happen because of the few that maybe are struggling socially, and they would have anyways, though. So definitely still important to be intentional, but I I have met a ton of homeschooled people who are amazing socially and just crushing it in life.
There was a family that we grew up with, and they were all homeschooled. There's 8 of them. There's 3 boys and 5 girls. Insanely intelligent and disciplined, and they were all taking, college stuff by like 13, 14, and the one was our family veterinarian. He's probably like 20 and out of vet school, but
Wow.
they're like, and great social skills, really, really great personalities. Just you could tell their parents really put a lot of intention in. So it's there's a lot of context into why that can be and can't be.
Yeah, for sure.
Overall, you kind of alluded to it, but what do you think that really taught you, that whole experience that's you've applied into your work? You kind of answered it already, but
Yeah, well, I think there's the added there's the added layer of like, so I actually struggled a lot in school. I didn't learn to read till I was about 10. And so had I been in public school, I think that I would have had a lot more trauma to work through, um, versus like I was primarily for those years around a very supportive family. Um, and there was, I think there was a lot of intentional conversation around um, the fact that a lot of artists actually do struggle. If you, a lot of times when you had a very natural connection for the arts, the connection for school isn't there at the beginning. Like you can only have one or the other very naturally a lot of the time. You can grow the other one, but it starts kind of at a base level of one direction or the other. And so having people around me that were careful and intentional and like very encouraging of the way that my brain was naturally wired was a really, really big deal. Um, and yeah, so, but I think there's plenty of other things though to learn. Like I said, kind of that um, individual drive and motivation and um, being able to pursue the things that you find interesting. Like obviously you still have to get the core stuff done, but you have a lot more freedom to choose your path, I think, when you're um working through your own stuff.
yeah, I could agree, and I agree to the way in a lot of senses you really self-teach yourself. becomes such a strong trait to have later in life
It
because
really does. And I think that that's a big reason that like I'm able to do the work that I do now. Because at first, when I started, I was really self-conscious about the fact that like I didn't go to school, I wasn't formally trained, I didn't feel like I had any sort of credentials. But now that I'm doing art that's like way different than anything that's out there, um, I'm very, very comfortable making stuff up as I go. Like I'll have an idea and people are like, how on earth are you going to do that? And I say, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. And I have that confidence. And so I haven't been held back by the, how do you do this? What if maybe it won't work? It's just, you just find a way because that's how it's always been.
yeah, that's literally this entire podcast. Like, because I and now it's funny because I've gotten to the other end of that and seen where it can be, a huge strength, and then it can also get me into trouble because I
Yeah.
will. It's the natural tendency to figure everything out,
Mm-hmm.
and then at some point you realize I do need to delegate certain things because I do have some real strengths here,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't do everything, and then that's where it kind of created a weakness of being so independent
Interesting.
that I wouldn't ask, I wouldn't ask people for help. And with my business now, just more recently in the last year, I've started to build an incredible team. And there's so many things that they're so much better than me at. And I used to look at that as a weakness because I hadn't figured it out. But it's really, when you kind of combine everybody's strengths, you can really build a really strong team. But that's one of the lessons that's taken me the longest time to learn.
Yeah, no, and I think that's it's a good thing to learn because we are human and we have limitations. And so being able to recognize that and say, it's actually okay if I'm not good at everything and I'm not perfect at this thing and somebody else can be better and that's actually good because then you build out that team and you get to stay, in your kind of zone of genius. And everybody gets to level up, because we're not an island. Like, really, we can't exist without each other. And I mean, Lord knows I would not be here if it wasn't for some amazing people around me. So,
Yeah, when you go back to that piece with the three wolves, and
mhm.
it's so much stronger, and I've realized that, experienced that firsthand. So it's interesting how your biggest strength can also be your biggest
Yeah.
limitation at the same time.
Good for you, though. I mean, it's a tough thing to learn. How did you kind of come to that point? Where was that tipping point for you?
I don't know, just like pure frustration and hell because there's no other option at some point.
Yeah,
You just realize the limitations of one person, and it's very easy to see when you look around the world or at everyone else, but it's hard to I don't know, it's just more exposure and time, and I don't know. Sometimes wisdom is slowly earned.
yeah,
So,
so true.
are any of your siblings or your parents artists?
No, no,
Okay.
not anybody in my even whole extended family.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it's very yeah, that's cool
yeah. I
because
mean, they have creative outlets, like liking to dance or things of that nature. But
very cool. Well, that's why I was curious to ask you about being homeschooled, but I didn't wanna derail completely.
we can go wherever you want.
Okay, so if anyone wants to find you, where do they find you? And is there anything else that people should know about who you are, what you do, and is there any misconceptions about what you do that you want to clear up? Or, I mean, other than
Mm,
there's a lot more depth there than meets the eye, but I think that's a pretty general concept in art because something can look like garbage to somebody, and somebody else can look at it and see, a canvas of the world. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Part of the beauty of individual taste, like there is a place for everybody. They just got to find their people. So let's see. So if you want to find me, my website is agmarkel.com, Markel. I'm on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, as AG Markel. So yeah,
what about TikTok?
I'm not on TikTok yet, but I've been told I should be.
What about X?
Also not that.
I'm not either. You said also. Okay, cool. So they can find you there, find you on your website. Anything you need help with, you're looking for in the community or the world?
Oh boy, that's a big question.
You never know
You never
who
know.
could listen to this
It's
someday.
so true. So I really would love to move more into the public art space. So I think that art impacts the way we experience the world and our life. And the beauty of public work is that it's accessible to everybody. And I really view it as an investment into future generations. I mean, bronze is a very enduring material. And so it's something that will be around for hundreds of years. Um, so I think especially because of the storytelling nature of my work, like I would love to be in more public places. I like working on a larger scale. I have some really fun ideas for some very dynamic, cool installations. So I'm kind of in the process of getting connected, trying to figure out who I need to talk to for those types of installations. So connections like that would be awesome. Um, Otherwise, I mean, I just like I said, I love meeting people, and so if you want to come see my work or just have a cup of coffee, come over to the studio, hang out with me. I work on my own a lot of the time, and so I love having people over just to be around. I co-work with friends sometimes and things like that, just to have more social time ingrained. So, um, yeah.
Well, very cool. I appreciate your time and thanks for sharing more about what you do. And yeah, respect. And I hope some people hear this that are the right people and they find you. And who knows?
Well, thank you, and thank you too for what you do. So I've been, I do this weird thing where I find a new thing and then I binge it, and so I've been binging the Mountain Mule podcast, and it's been really interesting to me the difference between like other podcasts that I've listened to versus one that I know is specifically local, because I have always loved Bozeman. Like I moved here when I was 18 on a whim and just never left. And the people here are amazing. But getting to have the opportunity to hear so many stories of the extraordinary people that live here, like it makes me so excited and proud to be a member of this community. And it also, like, there's a ton of businesses that I've learned about that I had no idea existed. And I want to go meet them and learn about them. And like, technically, you could reach out to anybody on any podcast, but the fact that I know that they're local makes it like it's so much closer to home, like quite literally.
Yeah, yeah.
So what you're doing is working, and I love it. I think that it's important, it's impactful. It really is bringing the community together in a cool way. So thank you for what you do and your heart and vision for this and putting in the time and effort, because it does take time and effort. I think it's really cool. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And thanks for being a part of it.
Absolutely. Thank
Cool.
you everyone for listening.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. Thanks for listening, folks. You can find the full blog post for every episode, along with key takeaways and links at mountain-mule.com. If you haven't yet, consider following the show. That one small action helps these Montana businesses get seen, grow, and thrive, and it helps this podcast keep going too. If you know a business that would be a good fit for the show, we'd love to hear from you. Just reach out through the website or social. Thank you for supporting these Montana businesses. See you on the next show.